For over a week now, I have been studying Canadian dairy brands. What I found is shocking. 3 of the most familiar Canadian dairy brands on every supermarket shelf, Lactantia, Beatrice, and Black Diamond, are all owned by Lactalis, a French dairy multinational headquartered in Laval, France. Saputo, the Canadian dairy company that markets itself as a Quebec family business, controls roughly 40% of the Canadian dairy processing market and owns nearly 24 competing brands across the country. Lactalis was at the center of one of the largest infant formula recalls in European history in 2017 and 2018. Salmonella contamination at the Crayon facility in France that affected babies in over 80 countries. The phrase "Made in Canada" on a Canadian dairy package can legally appear on a product whose corporate parent is in France or the United States, whose cheese cultures are imported, and whose milk pricing is set by industrial processors, who buy from Canadian farmers at squeezed margins. Real dairy was a relationship. A named local farmer, a named local creamery, a glass bottle returned to the dairy at the end of the week, milk that arrived with a date and a postcode and a face behind it. The dairy on a Canadian supermarket shelf today shares only the name. It has been pasteurized at high temperature for shelf stability rather than flavor, homogenized so the cream cannot separate, packaged in opaque plastic to hide color variations between batches, and bottled by a small number of corporations, whose ownership chains the average Canadian shopper has never traced. Today I walk through 8 Canadian dairy brands, sold across grocery shelves that you should be reconsidering, then 3 small Canadian producers that have earned a place in your fridge. No sponsorships, no brand deals. Every claim sourced and verifiable. Number 1. Lactantia. The blue and white carton with the "Canadian since 1907" tagline. The dairy brand most Canadian shoppers grew up trusting. The package implies a long-running Canadian family business, with deep agricultural roots in Quebec. Lactantia is owned by Lactalis Canada, a subsidiary of Lactalis SA, a French dairy multinational headquartered in Laval, France, controlled by the Besnier family. Lactalis is one of the largest dairy companies in the world, operating 198 factories across 55 countries, with annual revenue exceeding 28 billion euros. The Lactantia brand was acquired by Lactalis when Parmalat Canada was bought in 2019. The "Canadian since 1907" tagline refers to the brand's founding date, not to current ownership. Decisions about what goes in the Lactantia carton are made in a French boardroom. Lactalis itself was at the center of one of the largest food safety scandals in modern European history. Salmonella contamination at the Crayon facility in France affected babies in over 80 countries. Between 2017 and 2018, triggered one of the largest infant formula recalls ever conducted and led to criminal investigation in France. The same corporate parent that managed that crisis is the corporate parent of the Lactantia carton in your fridge. The carton is a heritage claim about the brand. It is not a claim about who currently owns the company. Number 2. Beatrice. Another familiar Canadian dairy brand. The script logo carton. The since the 1890s Quebec heritage. The implication of Canadian-owned dairy continuity. Beatrice is also owned by Lactalis Canada, the same French parent company that owns Lactantia. The shopper looking at the Lactantia carton and reaching for the Beatrice carton instead has not chosen a different company. They have chosen a different label on the same Lactalis-controlled production system. Both Lactantia and Beatrice are bottled in Lactalis Canada facilities, often using milk pooled through the same supply contracts with Canadian dairy farmers and shipped through the same distribution chain to the same supermarket shelves. Lactalis Canada operates Lactantia, Beatrice, Black Diamond, Astro Yogurt, Balderson Cheese, the licensed Cracker Barrel cheese line, and a cluster of smaller cheese brands out of overlapping production and distribution networks. Multiple Canadian-feeling brand names. One common French corporate operational backbone. Beatrice was founded in 1904 in Belleville, Ontario, a real Ontario dairy operation through most of the 20th century. The brand passed through Kraft and then Parmalat, before landing inside Lactalis in 2014. The Quebec heritage on the carton is marketing layered on top of an Ontario founding that was acquired into a Montreal subsidiary of a French parent. The Canadian dairy aisle is engineered to look like choice. In many supermarkets, two of the cartons sitting side by side are owned by the same French corporation. Number 3. Black Diamond. The cheddar with the diamond logo, the Canadian Reserve copy. The clear suggestion of small batch artisan cheese production from a Canadian heritage company. Black Diamond is also owned by Lactalis Canada. 3 of the most recognized Canadian dairy and cheese brands, Lactantia, Beatrice, Black Diamond, sit under one French corporate roof. Black Diamond was founded in Belleville, Ontario in 1933, acquired by Kraft Foods in 1978, sold to Parmalat in 2004, passed to Lactalis in 2014. When Lactalis acquired Parmalat's Canadian operations, the Canadian Reserve line on the cheddar package is a marketing description, not an ownership statement. The cheese-making cultures, the production specifications, and the strategic decisions about formulation are coordinated across all 3 brands by Lactalis Canada management. The shopper who consciously avoids one of these brands while buying another has not avoided the corporation. They have moved between the corporation's labels. The label says Black Diamond. The flowchart says Groupe Lactalis, Laval, France. Number 4. Cracker Barrel. The orange and cream cheese with the cracker imagery, and the naturally aged copy, sold widely as a Canadian cheddar option at most major Canadian supermarkets. Cracker Barrel in Canada is licensed to Saputo Incorporated for distribution and processing, Canada's largest dairy processor. Headquartered in Montreal, Quebec, founded by Giuseppe Saputo in 1954. Saputo controls roughly 40% of the Canadian dairy processing market and owns or operates nearly 24 brands, including Dairyland, Armstrong, Stella, Frigo, Nielsen, Scotsburn, Baxter, and the Cathedral City line in the United Kingdom. Saputo also acquired Dean Foods USA in 2020, at the time one of the largest dairy processors in the United States, and operates over 60 processing facilities across North America. While Saputo is publicly traded and Canadian headquartered, its scale and concentration in the Canadian market mean that different brands on the cheese shelf often represent the same corporation, rotating its own labels for different price tiers and regions. The dairy aisle illusion is the same architecture. 2 corporations, Lactalis and Saputo, own most of the brand name Canadian cheese. On the supermarket shelf, before we get to the worst 4 brands on this list, take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications. The next 4 include the Walmart Canada private label that hides the producer entirely, the Loblaws own brand dairy with the same opacity, a Canadian dairy cooperative whose scale most shoppers underestimate, and the processed cheese the CFIA does not legally permit to be called cheese in some categories. New investigations every week. No sponsorships, no brand deals. Protect what you eat. Number 5. Great Value Dairy. The Walmart Canada private label tier. Yellow and blue packaging. Across milk, cheese, butter, sour cream, and yogurt. The cheapest dairy at Walmart Canada. Read the back of any Great Value Dairy carton, brick, or tub. The address is Walmart Canada Corp., Mississauga, Ontario. The producer is not named. The processing facility is not named. The country of origin says Canada, but Canadian dairy regulations allow private label products to source milk from any combination of provincial dairy pools, and Walmart Canada does not disclose which dairy processor actually fills the Great Value packaging. The contract manufacturer rotates depending on supply terms and pricing. The shopper has no way to determine which company physically produced the dairy in the carton. Canadian food labeling regulations do not require a private label retailer to disclose the contract manufacturer of an own brand dairy product on the carton. Walmart Canada exploits this. Every other Canadian grocery chain exploits it too. The supplier is named in industry filings and trade publications. It is not named on the package the Canadian shopper actually buys. Number 6. President's Choice Dairy. Loblaws' private label dairy line. The cream and burgundy carton with the President's Choice script logo. Sold across Loblaws, No Frills, Real Canadian Superstore, Maxi, Provigo, Fortino's, Zehrs, and the Loblaw Company's national footprint. President's Choice Dairy is Loblaws' own brand. The address on the back of the carton is Loblaw Companies Limited, Brampton, Ontario. The producer is not disclosed. The processing facility is not disclosed. In December 2017, Loblaw Companies admitted to a 14-year industry-wide bread price-fixing scheme. The Competition Bureau investigation resulted in a settlement that included Loblaws agreeing to pay $500 million in customer compensation. The same private label apparatus that priced bread, in coordination with competitors, operates the dairy supply chain that produces President's Choice Dairy, with the same producer disclosure opacity. The shopper assumed a relationship with a specific Ontario dairy. The carton confirms there is no relationship to the actual producer, only to the retailer who sells it. Number 7. Natural. The blue carton, the script logo, the milk that's filtered 4 times copy, that suggests a premium Canadian milk, produced by a small specialized dairy. Natural is owned by AgroPur Cooperative. AgroPur is a Canadian dairy cooperative, owned collectively by over 2,800 Canadian dairy farmers. On that point, the structure is genuinely Canadian. The complication is scale. AgroPur is one of the largest dairy processors in North America. Over 40 processing plants, over $7 billion in annual revenue. Full industrial scale. The filtered 4 times claim refers to industrial microfiltration, a high-pressure membrane process that removes bacteria and extends shelf life, not artisan production. The marketing implies a craft product. The reality is industrial-scale microfiltration, calibrated for retail shelf turnover. AgroPur also owns or operates Natural, Iogo Yogurt, Seal Test Milk, Quebbin, OKA Cheese, and Island Farms in British Columbia, multiple Canadian-feeling labels under one cooperative balance sheet. The cooperative model is genuine, the scale is industrial. The natural marketing implies neither. A Canadian-owned cooperative is still Canadian-owned. It is not a small dairy. The natural premium pricing reflects industrial-scale processing. Branded as artisan. Number 8. Kraft Singles. The orange plastic-wrapped slices that have sat in Canadian fridges for decades. The cheese that always melts perfectly. The lunchbox staple, the marketed-to-children processed dairy product. Kraft Singles in Canada is owned by Kraft Heinz, the American multinational headquartered in Pittsburgh and Chicago, formed in 2015 through the merger of Kraft Foods Group and H.J. Heinz Company. By Canadian Food Inspection Agency labeling standards, Kraft Singles cannot legally be sold as cheese alone. It is labeled processed cheese product or prepared cheese product because it does not meet the minimum cheese content standards required for the word cheese without qualification. The product contains modified milk ingredients, sodium citrate, sodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, and emulsifying salts. Real cheese contains milk, salt, rennet, and culture. Kraft Singles contains real cheese as one ingredient among many, not as the dominant ingredient. The legal label tells the truth. The marketing implies otherwise. The Canadian shopper reads the marketing. This is the most bought processed dairy product. In Canadian school lunchboxes, sold in lunchbox portion packs. Branded with cartoon imagery. The children eating Kraft Singles on a Monday, in a primary school across Canada, are not eating cheese under the legal definition. They are eating an emulsified dairy spread, engineered to imitate cheese cheaply enough to sell as a daily staple. This is the deception we have been living under. 8 cartons, 5 corporations, Lactalis, Saputo, Loblaws, Walmart Canada, Kraft Heinz, controlling most of the brand name dairy. On the Canadian supermarket shelf, 3 Canadian heritage brand names, tracing to 1 French corporate parent, 1 Quebec family business, controlling 40% of the country's milk supply. One processed product, the regulator, does not legally permit to be called cheese. That is the avoid list. 3 small Canadian dairies that earned the recommendation. They do not advertise. They do not chase shelf space at the major banners. They make dairy. Number 1. Avalon Dairy, Vancouver, British Columbia. Founded in 1906. Still operating from the same Burnaby site. Avalon bottles fresh milk in returnable glass bottles. The bottles are picked up, washed, and refilled, the way Canadian dairies operated for most of the 20th century. Milk is sourced from a small group of named partner farms in the Fraser Valley, not pooled from province-wide dairy contracts. Avalon is family-owned, single-province sourced, and the producer is named on every bottle. Available at Whole Foods Canada, IGA in BC, Save on Foods, Choices Markets, and direct delivery in the Lower Mainland. Typically priced around $6 to $7 per liter, roughly twice the price of Lactantia or Natrel. You are buying single-source traceability and a returnable bottle supply chain that has not industrialized. Number 2. Sheldon Creek Dairy, Loretto, Ontario. A single-family farm that bottles its own milk on site. The cattle are named. The farm is named. The production facility is on the farm. Milk is non-homogenized. The cream rises to the top of the bottle, the way milk did before industrial processing. Sheldon Creek sells direct through farmers markets across the Greater Toronto Area and through select fine grocers, including the Healthy Butcher and McEwen Fine Foods. Typically priced around $5.50 to $6 per liter. The shopper can drive to the farm. The producer is the family standing behind the counter. At the farmer's market. Number 3. Stay Albert Cheese Cooperative, St. Albert, Ontario. A Franco-Ontarian cooperative founded in 1894, owned by a small group of Eastern Ontario dairy farmers. St. Albert produces traditional cheddar curd, the squeaky cheese poutine demands, and a small range of cheddar blocks and slices. The cooperative is small enough that the cheesemakers know the farmers personally. Available at most Quebec and Eastern Ontario grocers, plus shipping direct from the cooperative website. Typically priced $15 to $20 per kilogram for the cheese, $2 to $3 for a 100-gram bag of curds. A real cooperative, small, named, traceable, at a price most Canadian shoppers can manage for a Friday night poutine. What to check at the dairy aisle. You now know more about who actually owns Canadian dairy than 95% of Canadians wandering the aisle. The information you just walked through is on the back of every carton, brick, and tub at every Canadian retailer. Most shoppers never read it. 4 things to check at the dairy aisle this week. Number 1. The producer. The carton must list a producer or processor address. If the only address on the back is the retailer head office, and no specific dairy is named, you are looking at a private label contract product with a rotating supplier. Number 2. The heritage date. If a Canadian dairy package carries a Canadian since heritage date, check who owns the company now. The founding date is not the ownership date. 3 of the most recognized Canadian dairy brands trace to one French parent today. Number 3. The ingredient list. Real cheese contains 4 ingredients: pasteurized milk, salt, rennet, culture. Real milk contains 1 ingredient, milk. Anything beyond those baselines. Modified milk ingredients, sodium phosphate, emulsifying salts, calcium chloride, signals industrial scale processed dairy, rather than traditional production. Number 4. The legal product category. Look at the front of the pack and the small print at the top of the ingredient list. If the package says cheese product, prepared cheese, or processed cheese product, instead of cheese without qualification, the regulator has already decided the product does not meet the legal standard for cheese. The marketing implies cheese. The legal label does not. This is not 8 separate Canadian dairy brands. It is a corporate concentration architecture, calibrated on the calculation that the Canadian shopper trusts the carton heritage more than they check the parent company on the back of the pack. If this video helped you, hit subscribe for new investigations every week. and share it with someone whose dairy carton is in their fridge right now. Drop a comment below telling me which Canadian dairy brand you currently buy, and we will tell you exactly where it sits and why. That is the only language these corporations actually understand. Check the carton, trace the milk,